Welcome to another episode of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together later about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. The theme of this season is Back to Business. The past couple of seasons have involved deep dives on horror history, and this time around we're taking it easy with all of that, and instead focusing on talking about what is most interesting to us in each of the movies that we watch. So kick back, relax, and enjoy it with us. So you really watched American Werewolf in Paris and thought, let's go back for more.
No, I thought we had already watched American Werewolf in London.
Well,
I thought that was a thing. Yeah.
I had definitely never seen this movie before.
Blows my mind, man. I legit have no idea why I would have watched it. I mean, it just seems like a movie that I would have watched for the podcast, I guess is what I mean.
Yeah. Do you think maybe you dreamed that we watched it for the podcast?
We must have, yeah.
I do remember at one point we did an episode on Children of the Corn and recorded it and then for some reason never posted it. And then I found that on my computer the other day. I was just like, nice. What a time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe someday we'll release the lost episode. But yeah, so I didn't know anything about this movie other than that it was presumably the prequel, or that the American Werewolf in Paris was the sequel, I guess. Mm-hmm. But most of the stuff I read about that one just said that it was kind of like inspired by this one or based on the same characters or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I didn't know what I was getting into when I started. And I just cannot tell you how confused I was over the course of watching this movie. But then after the fact, I read something on Wikipedia that made it all make a lot more sense. And I feel like I can't not have that in my head when we talk about it now. So I figured I would go ahead and just give that background.
Oh, okay.
So this movie was written and directed by John Landis, who is an American filmmaker with Animal House and the Blues Brothers on his resume. Landis wrote the first draft of the screenplay for this film in 1969 and shelved it for over a decade. Prospective financiers believed that Landis's script was too frightening to be a comedy film and too humorous to be a horror film. After achieving success in Hollywood with the comedies The Kentucky Fried Movie, National Lampoon's Animal House, and The Blues Brothers, Landis was able to secure financing from Polygram Pictures to produce An American Werewolf in London. So if you go into this movie expecting like Blues Brothers Animal House style humor, it makes so much more sense. But I did not do that, and I was confused as hell.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely... There was definitely a style to films back then, for sure. But yeah, it definitely helps. Now, the other thing I think that helped me watching it for the first time, randomly, I guess at one time, was that I had already, when I was younger, watched American Werewolf in Paris. So I already had like some intrigue by it just from that alone. You know what I bet it was, if I'm just guessing real quick, because it just came to me? I have a feeling that I selected to watch American Werewolf in London and realized that that wasn't American Werewolf in Paris, and then just kept watching it. That's a legit guess that happened. But yeah, he was also 19 when he wrote it too, initially, Landis.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and in going back and like reading that about this movie, it makes total sense. Like as I've gone back through my notes, I'm just like, yes, they were 100% dead on when they were like, yeah, it's kind of too funny to be a horror movie and it's kind of too horrific to be a comedy movie. Like, but I think that actually works. Like, I think there's an audience for that, and I think that horror comedy is a real thing. But even going to that scene sort of towards the beginning, like right after they leave the pub, where it just very quickly goes from two Joker friends goofing off in a field to one of them getting just like horrifically mauled by a wolf. Like it just took such a sharp turn from like lighthearted kind of college humor to extreme gore that it really took me by surprise. but that caught my attention in like a positive way as someone who likes horror movies.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like it also, like, albeit comedic, in the pub at the beginning. Like I felt like it also had like that creepy town vibe, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of had, or Friday the 13th as well. It played into that. If it didn't have any humor, it would probably be, almost exact kind of. I don't know how to explain it. Like you just get like a weird, uncomfortable feeling, like you, as a viewer, that you don't belong. That something's just not right, I guess. And being that it was over in England, it's like I don't know if that's like compared to this small town between these two tiny. Basically, like, is this equivalent to like a little town that has just a gas station, a post office here in town that you might not want to go through because it's a little dangerous, or is it something else? But it's just cultural. I liked it. It was creepy.
Yeah, and it was like I guess the English twist on what we've always considered to be kind of an American small town tradition. So props to them for that.
I guess the weirdness has always been here. The weirdness with the American.
People have been weird forever.
The reason why I got chopped up there was because I was trying not to say specific towns because I don't want our listener to dial in where I'm at. But I was fixing to say a reference that you would have got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bert's Tavern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But this one, so we've watched a lot of horror comedy movies over the course of this, and some of them are a little more, I don't know, I get the style of comedy changes. And this one had that just kind of classic, I think of it as like kind of 70s movie mix of like slapstick horror and then kind of like the real deadpan. Mm-hmm. And so this one, like a lot of this one, and I guess maybe I'm just saying this because it was in England, but it reminded me of like Mr. Bean episodes from back in the day.
Oh, okay. I could see that. I thought the intro kind of piece where they're showing like the fields and everything reminded me of Wicker Man, like the original one.
Yeah.
Just a tad. And maybe just with the people and all that. But I could definitely see that as well, which also might explain why I liked it, because Mr. Bean's my sickness show. Watched that forever.
Comfort show.
It is, yeah. We had like a tape of it a long time ago that I would watch when I was sick. Yeah, I still do it.
That's funny to me. The idea of I've just never imagined that you could watch Mr. Bean not on a VHS tape.
Yeah,
that's exactly the only way I've ever encountered him. So, yeah. I think they're. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think with the horror comedy, I could definitely see it. Mr. Bean. I think for me, I don't know if maybe because I had watched it, I feel like I actually watched this more under the horror movie guys than anything else. And I don't know why, but like, other than like the Alamo joke that they said at the beginning that I took offense to, because I'm American. Well, there were things here and there, I guess, that kind of caught me off guard too, but it is kind of difficult as well. I mean, being dry humor-esque, it's kind of hard to catch that, especially when they're mumbling, bumbling. But I thought when I rewatched this before this episode, because we had to miss a week, and they don't know that, we know that, but I rewatched it, and I always forget just how quick the werewolf comes into play, though. Like when it's like you were saying, it has that section where it's just two homies walking through the fields, and then at the pub they're told beware of the full moon and don't go off the trail, and it's literally full moon and they're off trail, and then his friend dies almost immediately, and it's like that's intense, but also pretty comical.
Yeah, I definitely follow you on that. It was kind of hard to tell what parts were meant to be funny versus just like bad or awkward acting. Mm-hmm. But I feel like you captured it well when you said dry humor. I feel like this is just quintessentially that, in that it's kind of that of the time period the very like, oh, this situation is absurd, but we're being very serious about it type funny. And sometimes that lands and sometimes it doesn't, but I think it would land better if it were not mixed in so much with like such an extreme in the other direction with the horror. And it's also funny to me that you said he was 19 when he wrote it, because that totally makes a lot of stuff make more sense too. Like, oh yes, of course the hot nurse was just completely taken with him immediately and invited him to come live with her for no reason. And but then even just kind of some of the over the topness of some of the horror scenes and the gore, I feel like kind of falls into that too. Like if you think about the Arkoff formula from last season, this one hits pretty hard on that. And I don't know, the one thing that really stood out to me as a positive on this movie were the practical effects. And so I think that because it wasn't always great, but I found them to be more convincing than the CG in American Werewolf in Paris.
Okay.
And so for me, when he was going through like the transformation and stuff, it was a lot less like distracting, because I was just like, yeah, I know what I'm getting into here. This is like an 80s practical effects movie. But I thought a lot of it was well done enough that it wasn't like distractingly bad, and added to kind of like the feeling of like gore or like that shock that it was going for.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense when we were doing American Werewolf in Paris and, the reviews, reading, what people thought on it, talking about the original being done all those years before having better special effects in certain I definitely get it for sure. I think I think you either have to be like a younger person or just like a horror trash fan to be, especially for the above and beyond with the horror kind of content. Just like, we're here, we might as well rip their face off or whatever, whatever the case is. Yeah, I support it.
I was also very impressed with the double dream sequence.
Oh yeah, I know.
I was not expecting that. I don't remember seeing that in a movie before this one, like in a movie that's older than this one. But he has that nightmare about how he's back at home and there's the army of monsters that break in and shoot the place up and set it on fire and cut his throat, which is a little over the top. But then he wakes up in like another dream, but you don't realize that yet until one of them like jumps out of the shower and stabs his girlfriend to death, and then he wakes up for real, and it's just like, oh wow, that was like Inception before Inception. I was into it.
Yeah, I think I also think that in American Werewolf in Paris, I think the friend in American Werewolf in Paris that dies and comes back, and I felt like he added more humor than the one that we got. I think on this one, I felt like he was like a little bit more serious, more of a dick almost. Yeah. Which I don't necessarily feel like Friends would probably be if they were haunting another. But also he might still be pissed off when the werewolf attacked him and like the other friend just took off running.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Just opposite direction. I loved it because it was like, man, I feel like that's probably a real outcome. You always want to think that you're going to do the hero thing, and try to save, but
it felt like a real reaction.
Yeah, he just took off running. Yeah.
But it also kind of made me wonder, how like afterwards he was seeing like his friend's ghost or whatever. And the friend kept telling him like, oh no, you're infected now. You're a danger to everyone else. You got to kill yourself before you hurt other people. I kind of wondered, like, is he just trying to get back at him for running away?
Right. No,
like I legit had that thought for a while. Like, is he like haunting him? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, agreed. So, no, that's why I was thinking it. Like, I felt like he was more like a dick. That's exactly what I meant by that. Because I was like, dude, you're just trying to get him to kill. You have no faith in him, for being able to solve this problem. You're just,
Well, and just the whole concept of I'm becoming this werewolf at night. I'm attacking and killing people, but then they're coming back to like haunt me after the fact. Mm-hmm. I don't really know of another movie we've seen that kind of had that same weird, like, because it almost felt like he could convince himself that he hadn't done anything wrong because it was like out of his control when it happened. Right. But then while he's back in his like right mind, he's having to live with like very much in his face the consequences of what happened. And so then with the other like ghost friend telling him to like kill himself and set them all free or whatever, that's just like such a dark twist as far as what you would have to like try and deal with. And I don't know that I've seen a werewolf movie that has that layer to it. And so just kind of the regret and everything that comes along with it. And so I was kind of pleasantly surprised by that element of the story because it felt unique to me in the way that, I was not expecting a lot out of this movie, I guess, if we're being completely honest. And so there was some stuff in it that really caught me by surprise in a positive way, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely there with you. I think I feel like this is almost maybe like a situational horror, but I think it was kind of I like what they did with the horror or with the werewolf genre from within horror. I liked what they did with the special effects. I didn't necessarily catch a ton of the humor, probably just different styles, and they're a lot smarter than I am, probably.
I don't think that's true at all. I think this was just like a very niche humor style, and I feel like if we both went back and rewatched it, our take on it would be totally different if we were like looking for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'll just ask another question because I was gonna say, like, I feel like I would have enjoyed this even more watching it with a buddy, like watching Blues Brothers with a buddy. Like that's just a great movie in itself, one of my all-time faves. But I feel like if you're buddy, it's almost a buddy comedy of sorts, or comedy horror. And maybe watching could have made it a little bit better. But I think for the times, for the 80s, getting those special effects, it just kind of blew my mind a little bit. Moon Rising was in it, so.
Yeah, I think that if we were drinking Coors and making fun of this movie, we would have both had a really good time.
Oh, yeah.
So
100%.
But we are getting dangerously close to some of the questions that we're planning to ask each other, though. Did you have anything else you wanted to get into first, or should we go to that?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, I'm going to kick it right off then. And I am excited to ask you this before you can ask me this. It's a purely defensive move. Did you like this movie more or less than An American Werewolf in Paris? I know that you've got like the nostalgia factor with the other one, but
no, I think that I definitely would. I liked American Werewolf in Paris, 100% nostalgic reasons, but also I felt like it had like, if the storyline was more defined in American Werewolf in London, I probably would have enjoyed that one more. I just started getting lost on what was happening, but I felt like with American Werewolf in Paris, other than like who was the main werewolf that they were trying to kill, it just seemed to make a little bit more sense to me. But
it was a lot easier to tell the friends apart in American Werewolf in Paris. On this one, I kept getting confused about who was doing what.
Yeah, but and that's, like I said, I know we can't do it off in nostalgia, but I can't not. It's just I've watched it so many times that. But I like both of them. Like I thought both of them were good watches. I definitely would watch them again for sure. Oh, my time. Did you have a favorite scene?
It actually took me a little bit to decide on how to answer this one because I had a few. Like I mentioned before, I really liked that double dream sequence. I liked some of the transformation scenes. Obviously, like that theater scene. And I think I landed on my favorite one being when David becomes the werewolf and he gets free in London at night, kind of towards the end. And he's just causing like pure chaos, and there are car wrecks and people getting run over and knocked through windows, and it's just like complete chaos. I thought that was probably the most intense like horror scene of the movie. And I really liked that because it was the first time you really got to visualize like what he was capable of when he was a werewolf.
Yeah.
And it just felt like everything had kind of been building up to that. And then he's just kind of like unleashed in this city environment. I don't know. I just thought that was a cool thing to pull off.
No, I definitely agree. I think the transformation into the werewolf in real time was pretty intense. I think the one that was like the strangest or weirdest, not necessarily favorite, but the porn movie theater scene. That was just like, cause like he's even more decayed. Like it was just, just a thing.
Just
but,
again, written by a 19-year-old.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And here's the thing too. I forgot that they even existed. You know, like they might still. I don't know, but right. It's just like, oh yeah, those were a thing. But
yeah. Cool. So, what subgenre would you call this? Like, because I at one point wrote down creature horror, and then I wrote down horror comedy, and then I wrote down body horror, and I don't know which of those I would file it under more than the others.
I would label it, if I were to label it unofficially, it would be British humor horror featuring werewolves.
Fair enough.
But if I'm going to do it officially, I'm going to say it's a creature horror comedy. A creature horror buddy comedy.
Yeah, I think that works.
There we go.
I did think they really went hard on the body transformation in a way that I've not seen as much, like emphasized as much in other werewolf movies. Like it seemed like they were trying to really focus on the way his body was mutating and changing and kind of like struggling against itself. And that almost reminded me, like the way they pulled that off almost reminded me of like The Fly or The Thing or some of the other kind of iconic, more body horror-ish movies of the 80s. And so I kind of liked that they included that element as well.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Didn't mess with my whole phobia thing, but yeah, I could definitely see that. I'm going to ask the next question, which is what similar movies would you compare this to?
I'm going to take the easy way out and say American Werewolf in Paris.
Nice.
But no, I'm trying to. I
don't think it's too sim. It's similar to other werewolves in the sense of it has werewolves.
Yeah,
but it's not like the Wolfman.
No, I mean this one really sticks out as pretty unique in my mind, just because of the weird style of horror or the weird style of comedy mixed with the kind of brutal practical effects. And then the story was weird and the soundtrack, I mean, what? Yeah. So I don't know. I'm having a hard time coming up with one that I feel like felt the same. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if there's too many.
But I definitely do. Now that I've watched this, I think like what American Werewolf in Paris was going for makes a lot more sense. So I can see that why you would call that a sequel, even though there wasn't any overlap story-wise. Yeah,
and to jump back real quick, technically American Werewolf in London is a better film. I want to make that clear.
Oh, yeah. The question was, did you like it better? And so, yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Cool. Well, my last question for you, and this is pretty broad. What the hell are the rules for werewolves? Every freaking movie we watch, they're totally different.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I think, didn't we watch a film recently? I'm fixing to go down that rabbit hole again.
But are you thinking Trick or Treat?
Yeah. Was that the one where they were talking about the rules and everything? Or was it Slay? I'm thinking of Slay.
Oh, you're thinking of Slay, yeah.
Yeah, I really wish that the people who did Slay would do a werewolf horror so that they could like
explain all the different tropes.
Because I don't know, because like one side is like, you just get like, if you get scratched, are you a werewolf? Why didn't he fully? Well, I mean, I know he got scared off, but still, I don't know. I have no idea what the rules are. But the thing that seems like the main common denominator is you have to kill the main one. which is for like every, creature basically. But
yeah, and that whole idea again of sometimes if you get bit you become a werewolf, but sometimes if you get bit you become like a zombie ghost. It's just like, that's confusing, and understanding like the whole hierarchy and like who has to get killed for who to get set free and everything else, it's just kind of weird. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just give me a home invasion horror. Straightforward. And I think also the portrayal in this one was different than in American Werewolf in Paris, just because thinking through like, oh, there's almost like a society of werewolves who were setting up these traps basically for people. Yeah, that's true. Like that was not a thing in this one. In this one, it was like the one werewolf that was kind of being transferred between people and stuff. So even sequels can't agree on the rules.
What was the worst thing about this film?
Oh, man. Well, since you already mentioned it, probably the Bad Moon Rising scene.
Oh, it's a good song, though.
It is, but it was just a montage of him being bored in an apartment. And that's like a really terrible way to spend movie time.
You're damn right it is.
Like, you could just show the clock at noon and then show the clock again at 6 or something. Like, I was so confused. Like, I was like,
it was out of place.
Is there some like lore thing about how he can't go outside in the sun because he's a werewolf, or like what? I was trying to figure out how that played into the larger story. And I think they were just like, oh no, we just needed to feature that song. And here's the only thing we had time to film or something. I don't know. I was very confused by that one. That was the biggest annoyance in my notes in retrospect.
Probably because when he was 19, that was a really popular song and he wanted to put it in there. And he was going to do it regardless if he could. Yeah. Well, granted, there'd be 1,000 different scenes that would have worked, Bad Moon Rising, but
maybe when he was 19, the scariest thing he could think of was being grounded. Oh. And so he was just like, oh man, this will really amp up the terror in that film.
I can see that.
He's got to spend all day in the apartment when he's in a different country.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't know. Like I said, it would have been a lot more fun to watch this movie with you when we could like kind of make fun of it.
Yeah.
But I didn't hate it. There were some really interesting things happening from a horror perspective. I really liked the double dream sequence, and I really liked, and actually, I guess another thing that didn't really come up naturally was I thought the camera work in this was surprisingly good. Like pro level. Just the way that they sort of like would follow characters and like move the camera during the scene as things were happening. Yeah. I was like, this is not what I was expecting from what otherwise feels like kind of a low budget movie. So
yeah. It's things like that I think kind of helps these films along almost, you know. So.
Yep. So yeah, glad you picked this one. It was a good one to discuss.
Yeah.
This very much fits into our we do what we want back to business season.
No one can tell us what to do. Ever. Only thing I got to do is pay taxes.
And feed my dog.
And die.
Can't come soon enough. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com. Or hit us up on the IG. That's what the kids call Instagram. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.